Alright, welcome to another video, and before we get started I'd like to take a quick minute to thank all the Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members whose names you see scrolling across the screen right now. They make this financially possible, and without you, I probably wouldn't be here making videos, so thank you. Alright, we're flying once again. As you can see, we're almost a mile out. I just kind of took off and actually didn't have my microphone plugged in to start the narration, so I'm kind of starting it here at this point once I figured that out. But yeah, basically once we took off, you see we're flying in cruise mode right now. And you notice we're running at a little bit less throttle than we were on the previous flight. I had said before I wanted to set up my cruise to closer to about 30 or 35%. I have it set for 30% right now, is the target cruise throttle. And I notice it's running a little bit higher throttle than that. I did readjust the board level. I did, I think, 2.45 degrees of pitch up, which is based on kind of some numbers that I got from the log. That might have not been enough. I might need to add a little bit more, because I noticed here flying in cruise, letting it hold altitude, it is sitting at closer to around 35% throttle, averaging kind of right about around there. So it may be having to hold the nose up or hold a little bit of power while it's climbing to hold altitude. But if we go back to fly-by-wire A, and I'll lower my power down to about 30%, I just want to see how it does right here as far as holding altitude. Because this is how I set it up to trim the board to fly at this throttle setting. And it does actually seem to be holding pretty good to be fly-by-wire, where it's kind of ignoring the throttle and everything. I think it looks kind of good myself. If I go to manual, what does it look like? Yeah, there's no real trim change. It is kind of veering off a little bit to the left. But if we roll it back to the right, and then we center it, kind of get it to settle down right around here in manual. Okay, so this is hands off now. So yeah, the trim looks fine in manual. I'm still hands off. I haven't touched the controls yet. And it's kind of slowly rolling off to the right a little bit this time. So yeah, it's perfectly fine. It's already had a chance to trim itself, and that all feels good and looks good. So if we go back to fly-by-wire and let it level itself, how does it hold its altitude? We're sitting at like 160 right now. I just want to see at 30% throttle, is it going to continuously sink? And it kind of is. And I guess there could still be some residual lift out here. There's still a little bit of sun out, daytime heating, although it is like after 7 p.m. So I probably can still fine tune this a bit so that it cruises, because if we go to cruise, you notice it kind of, well, yeah, it's starting to drop the throttle up a little bit. But it's still better than it was previously. And you might notice we have a lot less wind today, and it's a fair bit smoother out flying around, and the airplane isn't getting bumped around nearly as much. I did have time today before this flight to swap out those control linkages, but I didn't do it. I wanted to leave the stock ones on here just to fly it on a better day with less gusty wind than we had on the previous flights, just to see if it felt better. And to me it kind of does, but I do still think it'll benefit from a little bit tighter control linkages with less slack or slop in them. So I'll probably end up swapping those out, or maybe using, like one of the comments suggested, use a drop of CA glue that will stick to the servo horn but not so much the metal control rod. And I guess even if it does stick to it, it should be fairly easy to break it loose and free it up again. I may try that. I've never tried it before. It sounds like a pretty good idea to me, a good tip. I may do that, or I may just swap them out, as I do have some that'll fit. But either way, we'll tighten that up later and see. Kind of watching these birds down here right now. They do tend to not like this low wing as much as some of my other planes. They're kind of splitting up into two groups. We're going to go this way so the sun's not in our eyes. There's some of them right there. And this is a lot easier to do, chasing birds with digital and with a pan servo than it is with a fixed camera with analog. But yeah, we're not going to bother the birds too much. I do want to fly out this direction a bit. Another thing I've changed that you might have noticed already is the OSD font. One of the comments mentioned that flying analog versus digital, one thing is the relatively large font for the OSD. And I agree, it does look better with a smaller font in the digital systems, and they kind of hinted that it might look better with a smaller font in analog. This particular font that I'm using right now is one that I customized myself some time ago when I was flying a lot of analog Arduplane stuff. I actually used this font on the AR Pro quite a bit in its early days. And it's just a font based loosely off of the Clarity Medium default font. And I changed up some of the icons and made the text a little bit smaller and cleaned up the border around them, the kind of black outline around some of the text characters. And to me, I just think it looks a little bit better. And I cleaned up the crosshair in the middle. Is completely different from the stock one that's relatively large in my opinion and kind of blocks your view quite a bit. But I'll go ahead and gain a little bit of altitude. And run up to at least 200, 250 or so, maybe a little bit more. I just want to kind of come out here and get a little bit of distance on the airplane. We're probably not going to push it past about 2 miles or so. Obviously it can do more, but I do want to just kind of cruise around. I want to keep it a little bit closer to home, just until we gain some confidence in it. And like I said, all this stuff is new. It wouldn't surprise me if we run out of speed controller or a motor or a servo or something crazy like that. Or even the video transmitter was never used before. It's the first airplane I've had it in. But even if we lost a video transmitter or a camera or something like that, the airplane could still fly itself home. I'm thinking more flight critical components like servos and motor and speed controller and stuff like that. The flight controller does have a number of flights on it in the Talon 250G before we moved it over to this one. So I'm relatively confident in it, but I don't have any reason to believe that any of the components in here are going to fail, but I'd still like to prepare for them at least in the earlier flights and kind of increase the chances of being able to recover the airplane should something like that happen. So I like to try to make it a point to stay out over the fields and not so much the wooded areas for a while until I consider that it's a proven airplane, proven build at least. But yeah, I've kind of run out of things to talk about, to be honest. I don't know what else to say. Go ahead and lose some altitude, get back down lower. And we're still flying in cruise mode. I'm pushing full forward stick right now. This is the maximum descent rate in cruise mode with the default settings. And I'll probably get a little bit more aggressive on some of this stuff on the climb and descent in cruise mode later, which is something I usually end up doing on pretty much all of my airplanes. We'll probably eventually get around to doing that on this one too, but for now everything's still in default as far as all that stuff goes. And it flies fine, it's a little bit relaxed on your climb and descent rate. Directional roll control, everything, you have a pretty good bit. Not as much as like manual or fly-by-wire, but it's pretty easy to navigate in cruise mode. I'm kind of considering right now
Fly-by-wire A.
Maybe kind of trying to shoot the gap through the trees there over the roadway like we do with digital sometimes, just to see how bad it is with analog. I'm not even sure it's going to be doable, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to kind of fly out in this direction right here, and I'm actually starting to get a little bit of sketchy video right there, seeing almost like the diversity receiver is kind of switching antennas. So, but what I was saying, I'm going to make a low pass out over the field here on this side of the tree, which is where the gap is that we shoot, right on the other side of that tree there. And actually the video feels perfectly fine right here. So let me swing back around and fly low like this in the other direction and get a feel for it. And make sure everything holds out and there's no nasty surprises waiting to catch us off guard. And then maybe we'll shoot the gap. And of course it's nothing amazing, it's just flying through the gap right there on the other side of that tree over the roadway. But it's just something, kind of a little benchmark thing I had kind of set up for myself. It's repeatable that I do with digital. And yeah, the video is starting to get a little sketchy right back here. Oh, completely lost video there for a bit. So I'm gonna climb up out of that. And what does that is the corner of this little overgrown area right here. I don't really want to call it woods. It's more of a weeded area that's overgrown, turning into woods. But the corner of this little plot of land that we're flying over right here kind of blocks the signal right out there when I get too low out behind it, because we're kind of flying directly towards home right now, and you see how this corner kind of overshoots the area that we're flying. So that's kind of what happened there. That's kind of what I wanted to get a feel for. Now, it's not terribly difficult to fly through static like that with analog, but like I said, I don't really want to have something like that happen when I'm trying to align on the gap or something like that. If it happens while you're flying through the gap, I mean, you just kind of hold still and wait for it to come out of the other side of the static, and you know, just kind of fly through it. But if you're in the process of trying to line up on it and you're making corrections and actually flying the airplane when you lose video like that, it can end poorly, especially if you're coming up on a narrow gap like that, where you're gonna have to miss trees and branches and things like that. So I'm not totally confident we're gonna fly through it, but we are gonna line up on it and get down low and just kind of see what happens. But I will be prepared to climb out of it if need be, if we lose video before we get to the gap. I'm actually gonna push down, try to get down and see, and yeah, we can make it. It's fine. So I'm committed at this point. It's too late to back out, and video is actually quite good. Like analog, you just kind of have a brief moment of sketchy video and totally flyable, or like digital rather. But I do think the digital is a little bit less sketchy actually than flying through there with analog, which is kind of surprising, especially running the Rush Tank Solo. We are running on maximum output power, by the way, and we also have a higher gain antenna on one of the inputs on my receiver. On digital, I've always flown with two of the low gain triple feed patch antennas, which are 9.4 dB if I remember right, 9.3, 9.4, something like that. And I have one of those on this analog receiver on one antenna input, and the other one is the larger triple feed patch array, which is about 14 dB. So it has a higher gain antenna to switch to, although it is pointed more directly east of here, and that little area where we're kind of losing video is kind of southeast. So we may actually be outside of the range or the beam of the higher gain antenna. We may just kind of be relying on the single lower gain one there, but it's totally workable. So at this point, I'm just kind of cruising around a little bit, making it a point to stay right around 30-35% throttle or so, where we're going to end up cruising most of the time with this little wing, and just kind of seeing what we can do for a duration. You see, we've been flying for 16.5 minutes and we just hit 1,000 milliamp hours. And theoretically, this is a 3,000 milliamp hour pack, but realistically, I think about the most you'll squeeze out of it is around 2,800. And I kind of make it a point to be close to home, ready to land at about 2,500. So I don't think we can milk like an hour out of it, but I do think we can get at least a half hour. Probably maybe 45 minutes with a little bit of reserve, which is actually pretty good. So this little wing is a little bit more efficient than at least duration wise. I don't know about distance wise. I actually don't have my milliamp hour per mile counter on this OSD that I usually put on them. I kind of forgot to put it on here. But it seems to do better, duration-wise at least, than the T1 Ranger that I fly with the same battery. I think I can fly this one longer than the T1 Ranger. Kind of flying by some of the cows out here. And there's the shed coming up. Gonna make it a point to get above the shed so we don't fly into the edge of it. That would suck. So we'll make a little pass over the top of the shed here. Move it down and continue flying low over the fields. But yeah, you can see we have a lot less of the kind of bobbing around and oscillation going on now than we did on the windier flights. But I'd still believe that can be improved even more, especially in the windy flights. I think it'll kind of calm down and fly a little bit more precisely if we tighten up those control linkages. So yeah, like I said, I'm kind of running out of things to talk about again. I think we've already pretty much addressed everything as far as this build in the last video, and kind of following up on some of the comments on this one. Speaking of following up on the comments, some of the comments that I got on the last video suggested that maybe the way I routed the antenna coax cable down close to the motor wires could be why I was seeing some of the motor noise in the video. And I replied to those and I explained that I don't think that's the case. Based on the motor noise that I've seen in the past, the motor noise I'm seeing here feels a lot like noise into the power supply for the camera and or video transmitter. Basically, noisy power on the analog video system is kind of what gives you this noise that we see here. Not this noise, this is multipathing while I fly close to my antennas. But the motor noise that I'm seeing in the video is more than likely because of a dirty power supply, or dirty power, noisy power supply, or noise getting into the power supply anyway. Because I don't believe there's any filtering for the camera and video transmitter power on this little Racer Star flight controller that I'm using. And I was hoping that the camera and the video transmitter would be able to filter its own power at least reasonably well, especially with the added capacitors that I put on the speed controller. And they're doing a totally acceptable job. I mean, you can kind of see the image quality, but I'm going to gain a bit of altitude right here so that we can cut power for a bit. And if we cut power, you can see we still have a little bit of switching noise, some bands in the video, but not a whole lot. And we power back up and you see some of that motor noise comes back. But to rule out the antenna thing, I didn't think it was that, because I kind of theorized that if it was motor noise from the motor cables making it into the antenna cable, that it would cause more of a problem with the RF signal, not so much the video quality. You wouldn't so much see the switch noise in the image, it would just kind of cause your RF signal to do crazy things. But that isn't the case. And just to rule that out, earlier today I plugged in a different cable, and it was actually an antenna with an MMCX connector that plugs straight into the video transmitter, because it actually does come with a little linear antenna that'll plug straight in, and you have a second the SMA extension cable or adapter cable, whatever, that we used in the build here. But I plugged in that little included antenna directly to the transmitter, and it's nowhere near the video cables that way, and I tested it on the ground, and motor noise is still there. It's ever present. So I still stand by my theory that it's motor noise making it into the power supply. Not so much motor noise, but the ESC switching noise is making it into the power supply. It's feeding the camera and or video transmitter. And there are ways to clean it up. I could run an LC filter, I could run more capacitors, I could try different things and eventually get it cleaned up. But I really can't be bothered because it's totally acceptable. It's kind of fine to me, and I really just wanted a little lightweight, neat, clean build, and we kind of have that with this little plane. So I probably won't spend very much time working on cleaning the video up any more so than it already is. So that's another thing I could talk about to kill some time. You see we're at like 22.5 minutes or so at 1300 milliamp hours. So yeah, I would like to see if we can hit 45 minutes, and if we do, maybe keep pushing past that and see how far we can fly on this battery with this setup. But like I said, it's flying really good. I like the way everything feels right now, and I'm just kind of out here cruising around and passing time at this point. Kind of ran out of things to talk about and things to do with the airplane other than just continue running the battery down. So I'm probably going to go ahead and stop talking now and maybe speed up part of this video, or maybe just skip over it. I'm not sure what we'll end up doing, but I'm just going to kind of shorten up the video a bit from this point forward, and any more interesting points that come up, I guess we'll include those as needed. right, so that's the end of the flight. As you can see, we've
Disarmed.
hit right at 49 minutes in the air and used 2,657 milliamp hours to do it. We've stopped at about 9.5 volts at rest. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with the efficiency and the duration. I don't have my summary screen on here, so I can't tell you the total distance covered, but I can probably look through a log and get that information. And if I do, I'll put it up on the screen here. But yeah, I mean, pretty happy with it. So thank you for watching. Hopefully it's been enjoyable and not too boring. And I'll see you all in the next video.